The abandoned land finally broke open, and the first demons treated freedom like a race they had already won. Several rushed upward before anyone could stop them, only to vanish inside spatial fractures and lingering monarch power. Their deaths silenced the celebration faster than any warning from the cautious demons below. Those who survived backed away and watched the broken boundary with much more respect. Then 18 third-stage demon monarch auras began hammering against the internal seals that still held them. 3 belonged to earth, 3 to water, 3 to fire, and 3 to wind. 2 more carried ice law, another 2 thunder, while 1 troll and 1 dark monarch completed the terrifying count. Thorin and the Sea Emperor watched from concealment while comparing 18 enemies against only 9 surviving Magic Council monarchs. For Levi, that arithmetic ended any idea of hunting freely through the collapsing prison. Too many monarchs were waking at once, and reckless harvesting had stopped being profitable. His 3 clones had already killed enough escaping demons to collect the essence needed for another talent breakthrough. So Levi spent it before the battlefield could become even less predictable. Omnipotent Clone advanced into its second legendary stage, without producing any dramatic change in his body. The panel revealed where the improvement had actually gone. Each summon still created 3 clones carrying every attribute and combat ability of the main body. Now those clones could remain active for an entire month instead of disappearing after a short deployment. More importantly, Levi could summon the full set 3 consecutive times before exhausting the talent. The clones still could not create clones of their own, preventing the battlefield from becoming completely ridiculous. Panda would probably call that restriction the universe defending itself from Levi's accounting habits. Levi cared more about what month-long clones meant for scouting, warfare, and simultaneous expeditions. And then the broken seal produced something even stranger above the abandoned land. Power that resembled chaos began gathering where the ancient barrier had collapsed. The 18 demon monarchs felt the pressure and discovered that freedom was already trying to close around them again. Vitellion and Earth Mother attacked from outside, while the trapped monarchs concentrated demonic law from within. The collision forced chaos and disorder into a transformation Levi had never observed so clearly. His chaos domain responded by stripping elemental power apart instead of merely suppressing it. Fire, wind, water, and earth collapsed into primitive energy after entering the altered field. That change completed the next evolution of Levi's legendary chaos magic. Chaos decomposition replaced passive suppression with a direct method for dismantling an enemy's power structure. Paired with void annihilation, it gave Levi 2 destructive tools capable of threatening durable second-stage legends. How useful was that improvement while 18 third-stage monarchs were still fighting to escape? Earth Mother answered the larger problem by demanding sacrifices from the weaker demons trapped below. Several monarchs accepted the calculation and concentrated their strength on opening a route before Dawn's coalition arrived. Wayne Demon Lord Pazuzu escaped first, and other monarchs followed through the failing suppression. The Dark Lord reacted too slowly and found Thorin's fire law closing the route in front of him. Black King Dragon reached the dimensional boundary before the prisoner could force another opening. By then, every other demon monarch had chosen survival over returning for one abandoned companion. Dark Lord had endured more than 100,000 years of sealing and still missed freedom by minutes. 6 third-stage powers finally forced him down while Dawn ordered the coalition to preserve him alive. A captured monarch might become more valuable than another corpse if Levi's Dominator contract could eventually control him. While the coalition secured its prisoner, Levi finished advancing his mage cultivation into the second legendary stage. That breakthrough let him return to the shattered prison and harvest weakened legendary demons before stronger factions claimed them. More than 100 damaged enemies were still crawling out from internal seals without enough strength to resist cleanly. His month-long clones moved through the ruins and converted ancient imprisonment into energy essence for future breakthroughs. By the end of the hunt, Levi had collected 40 second-stage legendary essences from the collapsing battlefield. 40 sounded enormous until he remembered how many third-stage demon monarchs had escaped into the wider universe. The abandoned land crisis had ended one prison and released an entirely new strategic problem. Dawn gained a prisoner and Levi gained resources, but neither side could call the aftermath simple. Returning Magic Council monarchs now faced awakened enemies whose numbers exceeded their own surviving top layer. The universe had watched 18 old predators wake, and 17 of them escaped into a world already short on safe borders. Once the immediate fighting ended, the returning Magic Council turned from celebration toward inventory and damage control. Returning Magic Council tried to understand what had changed during their absence. Old allies recognized Thorin, Hyde, the Black King Dragon, and Fire Element Lord Castag across the reunion. Some had been separated from Noah since the collapse of the Wizarding era. Black King Dragon explained why it had vanished rather than helping during earlier catastrophes. A cosmic disaster had trapped it far from Noah while the southern continent fell into political chaos. By the time it returned, friend and traitor had become difficult to distinguish. Neither original key remained in Magic Council hands, closing their old route into the prison. One dragon could not rescue Thorin while Hel and the gods were fighting across the plain. So the Black King Dragon returned to the Dragon Realm and waited for a survivable opening. Castag's history carried the same uncomfortable lesson from another direction. Ancient alliances had survived, but distance and sealed information had made them almost useless for generations. Now those old powers were back at the exact moment proofs of rules were approaching. What kind of peace could survive when every monarch suddenly needed the same scarce resources? Levi returned to the Transcorridor Fortress before that answer became urgent. He expected a military briefing and found 7 Magic Council monarchs waiting beside Dawn instead. Dumbledore stood among them as Grand Chancellor and the strongest surviving mage of their era. The others treated Levi with an ease that felt stranger than open suspicion. These were ancestors of modern human magic thanking a frontier lord barely old enough to be their descendant's descendant. Dumbledore dismissed the ceremony and handed Levi a spatial ring filled with legendary magical knowledge. Inside were spells, techniques, and research from several schools the restored council once commanded. Levi already possessed Amun's inheritance, but his actual mage profession had developed unevenly around innate talents. That new collection filled gaps that raw combat growth had allowed him to ignore. For one, Noah could now use those materials to cultivate more independent legendary mages. Dumbledore considered that return more important than keeping old scholarship locked behind prestige. Dawn waited until the introductions ended before opening her divine demiplane. A sealed palace artifact rested at its center beneath layers of third-stage suppression. Dark Lord was still alive inside Dawn's private prison. His body had recovered little, and his usable strength remained below a third of normal. Dawn had kept him because Levi's Dominator contract might turn one defeated monarch into Noah's weapon. That possibility was worth more than another corpse if the contract actually worked. Levi summoned 3 clones and entered the sealed palace without underestimating the prisoner. Dark Lord could barely fight physically, yet his spiritual sea remained wrapped in dark law. Dominator contract pressed against that barrier and stopped. Levi increased the pressure while watching for the first sign of uncontrolled backlash. The dark law did not weaken enough to justify gambling with the prisoner's mind. Forcing the issue could detonate the Dark Lord's spiritual sea and destroy the only reason he was still alive. Levi withdrew before greed turned a captured monarch into wasted energy. Dawn wanted to know whether cultivation level itself was the problem. Levi explained that his contract needed stronger mental force and enough law control to suppress automatic resistance. Reaching third-stage cultivation would help, but upgrading Dominator contract itself mattered more. That upgrade required the same resource every recent battle had been teaching him to value. He needed more second-stage legendary enemies to die. Without a large war, the universe did not provide that amount of essence on a convenient schedule. Coming Proof of Rules era solved that problem in the ugliest possible way. Every major faction would soon send legendary teams into dangerous plains and abandoned regions. Targets would become plentiful because ambition was about to centralize them. Dawn agreed to keep the Dark Lord sealed while Levi prepared for another attempt. If the contract eventually worked, Noah gained a third-stage slave. If it failed catastrophically, Levi could still harvest the Dark Lord's energy essence. Either outcome was better than killing the prisoner immediately. Dawn also admitted that the Earth Mother worried her more after the abandoned land crisis. Light Law already approached its upper limit, while Earth Law gave that goddess a second foundation. A rival who reached Supreme Realm first could rewrite every alliance around Noah. Levi stored that concern beside his own hunt for resources. Before chasing proofs of rules, he still had an older promise to keep. Panda had spent years believing he might be the last member of his race left on Noah. Levi traveled to the Fire Wastes and asked Castag what had happened to the missing Panda clan. The Fire Elemental Lord remembered the panda who once trained inside the blazing sun plane. Then Castag revealed that Noah's pandas had left to search for their lost homeland. Their home plane had been dragged into void space by the Void Spirit race. That information alone would have justified an expedition. Another detail turned the rescue into Levi's most important progression opportunity yet. A proof of spatial rules was connected to the Panda Plane's disappearance. Long ago, the Panda clan had produced a genius who formed a life contract with a human mage named Noah. Both eventually became third-stage monarchs and helped anchor the Panda clan inside the Magic Council. Generations later, another Panda genius awakened an exceptionally rare spatial artistic conception. The clan secretly raised him towards second-stage perfection while hiding his existence from demon enemies. Then the pandas found a proof of spatial rules for that genius. Unfortunately, the Void Spirits discovered the same treasure. A fight over one proof escalated into a war that consumed an entire medium-sized plane. The panda plane vanished into the void before either side could secure an easy victory. For Levy, the story transformed a rescue mission into a direct path toward becoming a space knight monarch. His current spatial foundation was already waiting for the law comprehension that proof could provide. He returned to Dawn with the news before excitement could outrun preparation. Castag's rough location placed the missing plane almost half a year away at Levy's maximum travel speed. Dawn confirmed the old history with Thorin, Hyde, Castag, and Dumbledore before approving the expedition. Dumbledore finally recognized why the Panda Monarchs had vanished during the Magic Council's final battles. That mystery was old enough that even he had mistaken absence for abandonment. Levy handed Stormwind's immediate affairs to Old Charlie and asked him to relay instructions to Anduin. Then he headed toward the Savage Mountains to collect the one companion who would never forgive being left behind. Panda had spent the post-war years acting like a mountain king beside the lava dragon Andreas. Neither magical beast recognized that Levy was carrying news capable of rewriting both their futures. The missing panda plane had been found in history before it had been found in space. Now Levy only needed to cross half the universe, survive the void spirits, and take the law waiting inside. Panda stopped joking the moment Levy mentioned survivors rather than ruins. For years, every unanswered question about his clan had ended with the same possibility of extinction. Castag's information replaced that fear with a location, an enemy, and a task he could actually attack. That relief lasted only until Levy mentioned the Void Lord guarding the missing plane. Panda recognized enough about monarchs to know that rescue would not resemble a family visit. That proof of spatial rules added another layer neither of them could pretend was accidental. If Levy secured it, Stormwind would gain a spatial monarch while Panda recovered his homeland. If they failed, the Void Spirits would keep both the plane and the law. That was the kind of bargain Levy had spent his entire exile learning to recognize. Panda asked when they were leaving before Levy finished explaining the travel time. Levy answered that preparation came first because half a year of travel created too many ways to die. The magical beast hated the answer and accepted it anyway. Some rescues were too valuable to rush badly. Some treasures were too dangerous to chase alone. And somewhere inside the void, an entire panda civilization was still waiting for help that was decades late. Back in Aura, Dawn treated Castag's story as intelligence that needed verification rather than a convenient miracle. She called Thorin and Hyde first, because both remembered the Panda clan before the Magic Council collapsed. Their accounts matched the broad outline of Castag's warning. Dumbledore arrived next and finally connected the missing Panda monarchs with an old unresolved absence. For thousands of years, he had wondered why one of the Council's strongest allied races vanished without explanation. Now the answer sounded worse than betrayal, because the entire plane had been stolen from normal space. Dumbledore did not promise that rescue would be simple. A Void Lord holding home field advantage could turn distance itself into a weapon. Still, the proof of spatial rules made delay even more dangerous. How long could Noah wait before another faction discovered the same trail? Panda needed no persuasion once Dawn confirmed the expedition. Andreas created the opposite problem by demanding a place on the team before anyone invited him. Panda argued that a first-stage lava dragon would only increase the number of people Levy had to protect. Andreas answered that Panda was equally first-stage and somehow considered himself essential. The dragon's real fear was less noble and much easier to understand. If Panda returned as a third-stage monster, while Andreas stayed behind, their rivalry would become unbearable. Adventure with Levy also had an irritating history of producing opportunities unavailable to cautious people. Andreas offered to fight first-stage void spirits, carry supplies, or serve as bait if necessary. Panda mocked every option until Levy stopped the argument by accepting the dragon anyway. A long expedition needed more firepower, and Andreas had survived enough battles to justify the risk. While Levy prepared to leave, the political map of the northern continent kept changing without him. Anduin completed the foundation of the Stormwind Kingdom in former Sicilian and Principality territories. The Tulip family and several alpha noble houses followed the new kingdom instead of scattering independently. Stormwind City remained the emotional center even as Anduin gained a crown and a wider border. For Levy, that arrangement solved a problem exile had once made impossible. His family could expand politically without turning the original territory into a royal capital. 4 months passed while northern populations relocated and new governments built themselves around ruined war zones. Levy used part of that waiting period to study second-stage legendary formations inside Stormwind. Power mattered more now because every expedition beyond Noah could end with a monarch appearing unexpectedly. During one training session, a violent fire fluctuation rolled across the territory. Angelus recognized the breakthrough before anyone reached the source. Hestia had advanced to the second legendary stage. The heart of the sun had once again turned impossible talent into accelerated progress. Anduin remained slightly behind despite possessing Knight's heart and enormous natural potential. Years spent learning magic and governing territory had delayed his cultivation compared with Hestia's single-minded growth. That comparison bothered nobody except the people who enjoyed treating geniuses like racehorses. Levi cared more that Stormwind now possessed another second-stage legend before the wider universe became unstable. Then dawn arrived with a message from Dumbledore that mattered far more than local rankings. Dumbledore had spent months near the edge of the universe searching for Void Spirit activity. He captured one legendary Void Spirit and extracted enough information to confirm unusual movements in one Void region. 3 more legendary Void Spirits appeared nearby during the next month. 4 Void Spirits concentrated in one region made coincidence almost impossible to defend. Dumbledore estimated a serious chance that the vanished Panda Plane was hidden somewhere inside that void. Dawn refused to let him enter alone despite his strength. A top monarch disappearing into unmapped void space would attract attention from every enemy watching Noah. Levi was a smaller target and far better suited to navigation through spatial instability. Dumbledore could meet him on the route and support the operation without advertising the destination too early. What rescue mattered if Levi died before reaching the missing plane? Dawn produced 3 scrolls and placed them in his hands with unusual seriousness. Each carried a third-stage legendary spell preserved by one of the restored Magic Council monarchs. Severus contributed Wind Law designed to create an escape opportunity. Godric contributed Earth Law capable of blocking a third-stage monarch's attack. Rowena contributed Lightning Law powerful enough to threaten a monarch directly. Levi recognized the battlefield value and only later recognized the price. A third-stage magic scroll required material taken from an actual third-stage monarch. Blood, bone, skin, and law-bearing remains were needed just to create something capable of holding the spell. The refining process then consumed part of the mage's own law comprehension. In practical terms, Noah had turned dead monarchs and living monarch cultivation into 3 disposable chances for Levi to survive. That should have made the scrolls feel like treasures. Instead, their weight reminded him how expensive one mistake could become. Dawn said the sacrifice was justified because both she and Dumbledore needed Levi alive for what came next. Proofs of rules would soon pull every major faction into open competition. A future space monarch was worth more than the recovery cost paid by 3 veteran mages. Levi accepted the scrolls without pretending he could repay that investment with gratitude. He loaded Panda and Andreas into his dimensional space and left Noah through the Grey Earth plane. This expedition became a hunt before it became a rescue. Levi still needed second-stage energy essence to strengthen Dominator Contract and enslave the Dark Lord later. Dawn provided intelligence on faith planes controlled by the Earth Mother and her subordinate gods. Smaller planes appeared almost empty of legendary defenders, which only made Levi more suspicious. He tested a medium-sized world belonging to Durga instead of trusting the silence. A disposable 9th-tier slave approached first and was captured by a legendary long-armed warrior. Levi descended through the slave and killed that legend before the defenders recognized what had entered their plane. That response revealed the world's real military structure. 2 experienced second-stage legends and more than 10 first-stage legends formed a normal medium-plane garrison. Levi's clones invaded while deliberately limiting their visible combat power. He wanted survivors and witnesses to believe the attackers were strong second-stage raiders, not something harder to classify. The garrison still died, and its treasures disappeared into Levi's dimensional inventory. Over the next 2 months, 5 medium-sized planes suffered the same kind of visit. 11 second-stage legends and 60 first-stage legends became energy essence along the route. This campaign looked like robbery because that was exactly what it was. Levi simply preferred robbing factions that had already chosen Dawn as an enemy. One captured Behemoth warrior finally explained why the smaller faith planes lacked legendary guardians. Earth Mother had concentrated many of her strongest followers inside a mysterious vast plane. That relocation suggested preparation on a scale Noah had not yet identified. Levi sent the information home through necromantic channels before continuing the hunt. A month and a half remained before the expected void region. Then his danger sense exploded after another medium plane battle. That pressure was too heavy for an ordinary monarch and too focused to be random. Earth Mother had personally come to investigate the repeated disappearances. Levi's clones followed the emergency plan instead of trying to learn more. They stripped the plane of anything useful, scattered their traces, and fled toward a nearby void region. Remaining in open space would let a goddess compare their speed, techniques, and attack patterns too carefully. Deep void offered danger, but it also broke pursuit logic for anyone without specialized spatial ability. Levi crossed the boundary before the Earth Mother reached the abandoned battlefield. She arrived moments later and detected enough spatial residue to suspect a human connected to Dawn. A second-stage human escaping her notice was unusual enough to deserve attention. Entering the void personally would have turned curiosity into a costly chase with no guaranteed target. Earth Mother chose restraint and let Levy disappear. Levy kept moving deeper because leaving immediately might lead her back to the route he actually cared about. Inside the void, even direction became unreliable without the right spatial foundation. Turbulence twisted distance while deeper regions carried enough force to tear ordinary planes apart. That environment raised the question Dumbledore had been asking for months. How could a mere Void Lord drag an entire medium-sized panda plane into somewhere this violent? Dumbledore offered the most plausible answer through the consciousness accompanying Levy. Void Lord probably had help from a formless demon lord during the original disappearance. That demon possessed the Gate of Void, a supreme spatial treasure capable of banishing a plane. That theory also fit the Void Spirit's long history of exploiting wars without committing to any faction. During the ancient demon conflict, they had robbed Magic Council resources, while everyone else fought for survival. Whether they formally joined the demons mattered less than what they had already done. Another piece of evidence arrived from a captured Void Spirit known as Blade. Its orders involved hunting pandas who had escaped into the void. 16 panda refugees had entered this region during the escape attempt. 7 were already dead, while 9 remained somewhere among the spatial interlayers. Those numbers changed the mission from speculation into a rescue with living witnesses. If pandas were still escaping, the panda plane itself had almost certainly survived. Dumbledore's attention divided at the worst possible moment outside the void. 3 demon monarchs had also moved through nearby cosmic space. Flame demon Samael traveled with 2 thunder demon lords while trying to avoid Noah's strongest forces. Dumbledore intercepted them before their route could carry them farther from the region. A firelaw attack opened the battle before the demons finished deciding whether to flee or fight. Samael defended while one Thunder Lord supported him, and the other tried to punish Dumbledore's approach. That exchange proved why the Grand Chancellor's reputation survived an entire fallen era. 3 damaged demon monarchs were still dangerous, yet none wanted a prolonged fight with him alone. Levy heard only fragments of that distant battle while continuing his own search. Then his clone detected something no map had promised. A massive legendary second-stage primordial flame burned quietly inside the void region. Panda and Andreas had spent the entire journey arguing about which one would find the better opportunity. Reality had just placed enough fire essence in front of them to make the argument expensive. Levi stared at the primordial flame while monarchs fought outside and the panda plane waited somewhere deeper. Should he keep moving toward the rescue, or spend precious time turning both companions into second-stage legends? Panda wanted the answer before Levi finished measuring the flame. Andreas wanted the same answer for completely different reasons. The dragon had joined precisely because opportunities like this seemed to follow Levi into impossible places. Leaving now would mean watching Panda gain another stage while pretending that strategic patience felt satisfying. Levi checked the surrounding spatial fluctuations and judged the location hidden enough for a short stay. That primordial flame could not be removed, so cultivation had to happen beside it. That transformed time itself into the price of the treasure. Every day spent comprehending fire gave the Void Lord more time to pressure the panda plane. Every day saved by leaving risked wasting a breakthrough that might matter during the rescue. Levi chose the option that increased the team's strength before the harder battlefield. Panda entered the flame's influence first and stopped joking once the law resonance settled over him. Andreas followed with unusual silence, unwilling to lose concentration after arguing so hard for the chance. Levi stationed clones around the region and continued searching through them instead of waiting idly. That arrangement turned one hidden treasure into both a training ground and a forward reconnaissance base. Dumbledore's distant battle with Samael kept major demon attention focused outside the void. Earth Mother had already demonstrated that she could still appear without warning. That made every quiet hour feel borrowed rather than safe. Levi kept his danger sense extended while the primordial flame burned behind him. Somewhere farther inside, surviving pandas were running from void spirits that expected no human rescue. This expedition had finally reached the point where every useful discovery also created a new reason to hurry. That primordial flame turned the void from a hiding place into a temporary cultivation ground. Panda and Andreas entered separate zones around the flame, so neither could interfere with the other's comprehension. For once, their rivalry became useful because neither wanted to be the slower breakthrough. Levi kept 3 clones moving through the surrounding void while both companions cultivated. That arrangement let the expedition search, scout, and grow stronger without abandoning the treasure. The calm ended when Levi's danger sense exploded from the direction of open space. Earth Mother had found the trail again. Her aura crossed the edge region moments after Levi pulled his active bodies back toward the void. The goddess recognized that the fleeing human carried spatial power far beyond an ordinary second-stage legend. She also recognized the pattern of Dawn's faction appearing wherever her subordinate planes had been raided. Levi did not wait for curiosity to become certainty. He crossed deeper into the void and let distance destroy the evidence linking his clones together. Earth Mother stopped at the boundary rather than entering terrain built to punish unfamiliar spatial senses. That decision kept Levi alive but confirmed something more dangerous. The goddess now recognized a spatially gifted human was operating near her hidden roots. Levi answered by becoming harder to trace, instead of trying to disappear completely. During another ambush, he discovered several void spirits serving inside Earth Mother's intelligence network. How many hidden roots had Earth Mother controlled while everyone else watched ordinary battlefields? These void spirits served Earth Mother as a trained intelligence network rather than independent partners. Each agent watched hostile planes, tracked movement, and reported through hidden channels. Levi captured enough of them to reconstruct the structure of that secret force. Then his clones destroyed the remaining team before the intelligence could travel home. 4 second-stage void spirits survived only because Dominator contract turned them into slaves. Their spatial instincts became more valuable than another pile of corpses. With the newly harvested energy essence added to earlier hunts, Levi reached another milestone. He had finally collected enough energy essence to upgrade his first talent into Legendary Stage 3. That option sat on the panel like a loaded weapon he could not use carelessly. A third-stage talent would change his aura, his law exposure, and possibly how monarchs recognized him. Levi postponed the upgrade until the rescue operation reached a more controllable environment. The 4 void spirit slaves became scouts instead. One target remained especially important among the missing void spirits. That individual had ties to the Void Lord rather than Earth Mother's intelligence force. Levi believed such a target might know more about the Panda Plane's current position. While the slaves searched, another clue appeared in the void itself. A region carried unmistakable residue from Panda's drunken state power. Levi had fought beside Panda too many times to mistake that strange mixture of chaos and martial intent. The residue was old enough to prove pandas had camped there for some time. It was also fresh enough to suggest they had moved recently rather than vanished years ago. Levi centered the search on that location and ordered every clone to inspect nearby spatial interlayers. Void space hid people behind folds that ordinary perception treated like empty distance. 3 days later, one clone found a concealed layer containing living panda refugees. 10 pandas were hiding inside when Levi approached. 4 had reached the second legendary stage, while 6 remained at the first. Their first reaction was suspicion, because survival had taught them to distrust every unfamiliar spatial fluctuation. That second reaction was confusion, when the newcomer sounded human rather than void spirit. Levi explained Noah's recovery before discussing the rescue plan. Returning Magic Council had changed the strategic picture the refugees remembered from decades earlier. Dawn was alive, Dumbledore was active, and Noah's factions were stronger than when the Panda Plane disappeared. The outside pandas had spent years believing the old council no longer existed. News of its return hit them like proof that history had restarted while they were trapped. They confirmed the central fact Levi needed most. The Panda Plane still existed deeper inside the void. Void Lord had not destroyed it because the Panda Monarch Biku continued holding the plane together. That defense came at a brutal cost. Biku had to fight the Void Lord while simultaneously stabilizing a medium-sized world against the void environment. Every extra that stalemate continued, the weaker both the plane and its defenders became. Escaping pandas had been sent outward to find reinforcements before the balance finally broke. Void spirits hunted them precisely because outside help could end the siege. Levi now possessed something the Void Lord's entire strategy had tried to prevent. He had witnesses, a route, and enough spatial slaves to trace the refugees backward. The only problem was the distance still separating the search teams. Several panda groups remained scattered across different spatial interlayers. Levi spent days collecting them while avoiding unnecessary fights with local void spirits. That process taught the rescued pandas how much difference real spatial navigation made. Journeys that had taken them years could be retraced by Levi's group in days. Inside the void, direction separated exploration from permanent exile. A lost traveler could survive for years and still never find a recognizable route home. The refugees also explained that their original reinforcements had been intended for Fire Element Lord Castag. They never imagined Noah's human faction would arrive first with a potential space monarch. That unexpected advantage frightened the Void Lord once subordinate deaths began reaching him. Far deeper inside, the monarch sensed legendary void spirit marks disappearing one after another. At first, he blamed reckless subordinates hunting dangerous panda refugees. Soon even the stronger void spirit agents began disappearing along the same route. That pattern stopped looking like bad luck and started looking like an organized intrusion. Void Lord recognized what failure would cost him. He had spent nearly 10,000 years trying to break Biku's defense and seize the proof of spatial rules. Losing that proof now would turn an entire era of siege into someone else's breakthrough. Biku felt the same shift from the opposite side. Subordinate void spirits were disappearing, which meant the enemy's control over outer routes was weakening. For the first time in decades, help looked possible instead of theoretical. Levi continued gathering scattered pandas while both monarchs prepared for the same unknown visitor. Then Earth Mother changed the search again. She sent Griffin Beast King into the void with a reward worthy of a third-stage monarch. That promised payment included a fragment of a supreme wind treasure. Griffin accepted because wind law gave him unusual speed even inside unstable void regions. Void spirit guides joined him so direction would not become the same problem that stopped other monarchs. The pursuit became more dangerous than Earth Mother's earlier personal inspection. She had refused to chase one human deep into the void. Griffin had been hired specifically to do exactly that. Levi detected the new pressure when a clone nearly exposed the main body's route. The Beast King's speed closed distances that Levi had assumed were safe. One bad merge between clone paths could lead a third-stage monarch directly to his real body. Levi changed the search pattern and started leaving decoy clones farther from the main route. Each decoy forced Griffin to choose whether another trail might be the genuine target. That tactic bought time but also cost clones whenever the Beast King caught one. For one long moment, the rescue mission became a chase where neither side could see the actual finish line. Levi refused to abandon the panda search because every recovered refugee narrowed the route inward. Griffin refused to leave because every lost clone convinced him the target remained close. Meanwhile, Panda and Andreas finally finished absorbing the primordial flame's opportunity. Both advanced into the second legendary stage after weeks of comprehension. Andreas celebrated first and checked whether Panda had advanced too. Panda's expression ruined the dragon's hope of claiming a unique victory. The breakthrough still mattered far beyond their argument. Two first-stage companions had become second-stage combatants before the real siege even began. Levi regrouped with them and pushed deeper using the accumulated refugee markers. Griffin eventually found the abandoned primordial flame and recognized why his target had delayed there. The strong residue of Panda and lava dragon fire made the expedition's composition clearer. It also confirmed that Levi had been converting pursuit time into upgrades instead of merely running. That realization made the Beast King angrier and less patient. Deeper inside, the Panda plane finally appeared through layers of spatial distortion. The medium-sized world looked less like a home than a ship pinned inside an endless storm. Biku's Earth Law reinforced the barrier from within while the Void Lord pressed spatial law from outside. The two monarchs had been fighting the same positional war for almost 10,000 years. Biku could not pursue because leaving the barrier exposed would doom the plane. Void Lord could not finish the siege because the Panda monarch had fused his defense with the world's foundation. That equilibrium explained why the plane had survived so long and why it could not survive forever. Every violent exchange pushed the surrounding void harder against the barrier. Every year reduced the resources available to the pandas trapped inside. Void Lord now sensed outside interference and began increasing pressure before rescue could fully arrive. Biku answered by spending more law power than the plane could comfortably support. What could rescue even mean inside a 10,000-year siege balanced on one exhausted monarch? Neither one had enough attention left to monitor every minor spatial fluctuation near the battlefield. A second-stage human with clones could exploit that blind spot better than an obvious third-stage rescuer. Void Lord still believed the unknown spatial pressure belonged to a monarch approaching from outside. Levi intended to keep that misunderstanding alive as long as possible. Before moving, he sent the rescued pandas farther from Griffin's search path. Panda and Andreas stayed with the main group, because retreat was no longer the only plan. Ahead waited a 10,000-year siege built around one exhausted monarch and one stolen law. Rescue meant breaking a balance that had already consumed generations on both sides. Levi created new clones, while the Panda plane trembled under another exchange of Earth and space. Then the Void Lord committed more forces inside the barrier, and the rescue window finally opened. Void Lord sent 27 legendary Void Spirits into the Panda plane as an internal assault force. Only 19 legendary pandas remained inside to meet them. The numbers favored the attackers even before Biku's divided attention entered the calculation. Those Void Spirits were expendable from the monarch's perspective, because victory mattered more than bringing them home. Biku recognized the same arithmetic and ordered his people to fight as if no second battle existed. The plane's stored resources were opened without regard for what future generations might need. A civilization that lost this battle would have no future generation to complain about overspending. Levi saw the internal assault begin and stopped searching for a cleaner opportunity. 3 clones moved toward the Panda plane, while pretending to chase 2 of his enslaved Void Spirits. The disguise forced the Void Lord to read the movement as an internal dispute among his own race. At the last moment, Levi's clones killed the two slaves and accelerated toward the barrier. Void Lord finally recognized the deception and attacked personally. Two clones vanished under third stage spatial power before reaching the plane. That third crossed the barrier before the Monarch could close the route. Inside, two second stage Void spirits attacked the intruder before anyone could ask what side he represented. Levi's surviving clone answered with spatial suppression and chaos power rather than introductions. Both Void spirits died before the surrounding pandas recognized why their enemies were losing at spatial combat. The entire inner battlefield paused around the impossible human standing between both armies. And somewhere outside, the Void Lord finally recognized that the rescue had already entered the house he was trying to break. Inside the panda plane, Levi's surviving clone had already changed the meaning of the entire internal battle. Two second stage Void spirits died before either faction recognized what the human intruder could really do. Nearby pandas stopped fighting long enough to decide whether rescue had somehow arrived wearing Noah's face. Surviving Void spirits were more disturbed because spatial superiority had always been their safest assumption. Then two faint consciousnesses descended from opposite directions. BQ and the Void Lord were still fighting outside, yet both projected enough will inside to examine the newcomer. Levi introduced himself to BQ and deliberately mentioned Dumbledore before the Void Lord could control the conversation. The name alone changed the monarch's expression. Dumbledore belonged to an era the Void Lord had spent thousands of years assuming was finished. BQ reacted with equal disbelief because the Grand Chancellor should have died with the old Magic Council. Levi told BQ privately to postpone questions until they forced the Void Lord away. BQ accepted the gamble because his world was already approaching the point where patience became suicide. Outside the barrier, BQ intensified his attacks and invoked Dumbledore's return as psychological pressure. Void Lord refused to abandon a proof of spatial rules pursued for nearly 10,000 years. Instead, he ordered every remaining Void spirit inside the panda plane to attack without restraint. The internal war became a final assault rather than another phase of the siege. BQ opened every reserve he had preserved for the possibility of rescue. Levi used the confusion to explain what he actually intended. He wanted BQ to create a moment where the Void Lord believed another space monarch had joined the battle. BQ thought the plan sounded absurd because Levi was still visibly second stage. Levi answered by killing more Void spirits faster than the monarch expected from any supposed support unit. The speed changed BQ's skepticism into a willingness to risk one decisive deception. Then Levi's true body began the upgrade he had been postponing. The energy essence gathered across previous hunts flowed into dimensional space, instead of Dominator contract. A strange spatial force separated from the Void and entered his night life seed. Inside the dimensional demoplane, Panda and Andreas watched the sky become clearer while the ground hardened under their feet. The once vague boundary expanded until the space started behaving like a genuine world. Panda refugees inside recognized the pressure before Levi explained anything. They had lived beneath the Void Lord's law long enough to know spatial law when it touched them. Andreas asked whether Levi had somehow become a third-stage monarch without anyone noticing. Panda rejected that possibility because their life contract had not registered a cultivation breakthrough. The contradiction only grew as the dimensional world continued expanding. When the transformation ended, Levi opened the panel and finally recognized what his talent had become. Dimensional space had advanced to the third legendary stage. An initial plane now existed inside the night life seed with a diameter of roughly 15,000 kilometers. 12 dimensional gates could operate simultaneously inside that growing world. Devour could swallow targets up to the Talent's current level and banish captured matter into the void. Most important of all, the initial plane carried 1% of genuine spatial law. Levi had gained law power before becoming a third-stage cultivator. That broke a rule Dumbledore had treated as universal across recorded history. Levi tested whether the new law could substitute for a proof of rules during night advancement. Even the panel denied the breakthrough despite spatial law already living inside him. Possessing law through talent did not mean his knight profession had completed the comprehension needed for Monarch breakthrough. Levi awakened Dumbledore's consciousness and explained what had happened. For once, the Grand Chancellor needed several moments before offering an answer. He had never seen a second-stage cultivator produce a law-bearing plane through innate talent alone. Dumbledore asked Levi to let the consciousness enter the initial plane directly. The inspection only made the anomaly harder to classify. Historical initial planes usually began with several primordial laws, especially earth, water, fire, and wind. Levi's new world contained only spatial law and had already skipped into a small plane scale. That made it less like a textbook initial plane and more like a private spatial civilization foundation. Dumbledore warned him that the universe eventually limited monarch growth through law percentages, rather than simple energy accumulation. Low, middle, high, and top monarchs were separated by how much of a law they truly controlled. Approaching completion without a supreme treasure created a wall almost nobody crossed. Levi stored those categories for later and focused on the immediate problem outside. That new initial plane gave every clone access to a faint spatial law aura. That was exactly the deception BQ needed. One clone appeared near the panda barrier, while another stabilized a collapsing section from the opposite side. BQ sensed two law-bearing humans and nearly lost focus from the shock. Could a faint law aura really fool a monarch who had ruled space for millennia? Levi let the monarch assume whatever explanation frightened him most. Perhaps survivors from the ancient Chaos family had reached Noah before anyone noticed. Perhaps Dumbledore had brought another space monarch. Perhaps Noah had hidden more ancient power than anyone recognized. Void Lord only needed to believe that staying meant facing reinforcements he could not measure. Biku attacked at the same time and stopped caring how strange the plan looked. Their combined pressure finally forced the Void Lord to retreat from the Panda Plain. For the first time in nearly 10,000 years, the siege line moved away from the world instead of toward it. Biku relaxed for one heartbeat and asked what Levi actually was. Levi admitted that he still lacked the proof of spatial rules and had not become a Night Monarch. The law came from his talent and initial plane rather than his profession. That answer disturbed Biku more than the earlier bluff. A law appearing before third-stage cultivation violated everything the Panda Monarch recognized about advancement. Levi postponed the explanation because the Void Lord had not gone far enough. Driving him away solved the siege only if he stayed separated from Griffin Beast King. The worst outcome would be two hostile monarchs meeting and comparing information. Levi gathered clones and pursued while Biku returned to stabilize the damaged Panda Plain. Void Lord fled with resentment strong enough to overcome caution. Almost 10,000 years of effort had collapsed because of a human who should not possess any law at all. Then two second-stage Void Spirits appeared ahead of him and claimed several monarchs were nearby. The report made the Void Lord nervous enough to listen instead of killing them for incompetence. Those two Void Spirits belonged to Levi. They attacked their former monarch without warning and worsened injuries he was already struggling to suppress. The betrayal mattered less for damage than for confusion. Why would his own race sacrifice themselves unless another power had already taken control of the road? 4 faint spatial law signatures appeared around him before he found an answer. Void Lord chose a direction and attempted to break the encirclement. That first direct clash exposed the entire deception before either side could adjust. The spatial law opposing him was real, but the supposed monarch carrying it was still only second stage. Rage replaced fear when he recognized how thoroughly Levi had manipulated perception. The human had never needed several space monarchs. He only needed enough law-bearing clones to make an exhausted monarch imagine them. Void Lord imprisoned the nearest Levi clone and prepared to crush the fraud personally. That was the exact clone Levi wanted him to capture. A third-stage lightning scroll from Rowena was hidden with it. Levi dissolved the clone and left the scroll inside the prison at point-blank range. Lightning law erupted before the Void Lord could retreat. Half his body disappeared under the blast while the surrounding void became violently unstable. Only desperate spatial law control prevented the monarch from being torn apart completely. Void Lord recognized Rowena's technique and finally recognized how much ancient magic council support Levi carried. 2 more clones arrived before he recovered. Even then, direct attacks remained insufficient against a third-stage monarch defending with real law. 1 clone died almost at once when the Void Lord stopped underestimating them. Levi accepted the loss because the target no longer had enough strength to outrun repeated pressure. The remaining 2 third-stage scrolls came forward. Godric's Earth Law struck first and suppressed the wounded monarch inside crushing force. Void Lord roared when he recognized another Magic Council signature being spent on 1 second-stage human's hunt. Severus's Wind Law followed before the suppression could break. That attack shredded what remained of the Void Lord's defense and forced him through unstable void currents. What had begun as 3 survival scrolls was becoming a monarch-killing budget in Levi's hands. The cost would have been obscene if the target were anything less valuable. This monarch had held an entire plane hostage for 10,000 years and blocked Levi's path to spatial law. Levi kept the clones close until the last resistance finally collapsed. Void Lord died inside a storm of lightning residue, earth suppression, wind law, and torn space. Even Levi needed a moment to accept the result. A second-stage cultivator had just killed a third-stage spatial monarch before completing his own monarch breakthrough. That victory looked impossible only if someone ignored 3 borrowed monarch spells, clones, law-bearing talent, and timing. In other words, it was exactly the kind of expensive, unfair fight Levi preferred. The void slowly began reclaiming the shattered battlefield. Fragments of the Void Lord's body vanished into spatial turbulence along with damaged treasures. Levi searched for the proof of spatial rules and found nothing. Dumbledore had already warned him that the universe reclaimed a monarch as proof after death. Stopping that process required defying cosmic rules and paying backlash even top monarchs avoided casually. Levi could not even perceive the retrieval mechanism yet. He settled for corpse fragments, a relatively intact head, and whatever treasures the void had not swallowed. Then he returned toward the Panda Plain before another monarch could inspect the disturbance. Bikku opened a gap in the barrier and asked whether the Void Lord had finally gone far enough. Levi answered by placing the severed head in front of him. Bikku stared at the enemy he had fought for almost 10,000 years and forgot to respond. Biku's first explanation was that Dumbledore must have intervened personally. Levi released Dumbledore's consciousness instead of arguing about how unbelievable the kill sounded. The reunion between ancient allies carried more history than either wanted to unpack during a damaged plane emergency. Bikku tried to apologize for hiding the proof of spatial rules from the Magic Council long ago. Dumbledore cut off the apology because the old council had contained enough internal problems to justify caution. Bikku recognized the unspoken message and looked toward Levi instead. The Panda clan had no current spatial genius capable of using the proof. Keeping it had nearly destroyed their world once already. So Bikku handed the proof of spatial rules to the human who had just ended the siege. Levi accepted the small manifestation of cosmic law with more caution than he had shown against the Void Lord. That rescue had finally produced the treasure every faction in this expedition had been pretending was secondary. Now the only remaining question was whether Levi could survive understanding what the universe had put inside it. Panda watched the proof change hands and showed less jealousy than Levi expected. His clan had survived, which made every other reward feel secondary for once. Andreas was more interested in how many stages Levi intended to skip before returning home. Levi ignored the dragon and stored the proof inside the safest layer of his initial plane. The artifact was small enough to hold in one hand and dangerous enough to redirect wars. Bikku ordered the Panda Plane's surviving legends to begin repairing the barrier immediately. Dumbledore promised that Noah would help restore the clan once the route home was stabilized. The 10,000-year siege had ended without giving the pandas time to celebrate properly. Levi sat down beside the proof of spatial rules and prepared to find out what victory had actually bought him. Bikku handed over the proof of spatial rules because keeping it no longer served the Panda clan. Dumbledore recognized the gesture as both gratitude and a decision about the clan's future alignment. That proof had already nearly destroyed their civilization once. Giving it to Levi converted catastrophe into a relationship with Noah's fastest rising spatial power. Dumbledore also revealed the part Bikku had not considered. Panda shared a life contract with Levi, meaning the clan's future was already tied to him personally. That discovery turned Biku's careful diplomacy into visible relief. The rescued panda refugees were introduced one by one before the reunion became too emotional for strategy. Dumbledore eventually asked how the Void Lord had actually died. Bikku still assumed the Grand Chancellor must have delivered the killing blow personally. Levi explained the chase, the bluff, the enslaved void spirits, and the 3 third-stage scrolls. He left out only the details that did not improve anyone's understanding of the result. Dumbledore stared at him long enough to reconsider the purpose of every emergency item he had provided. 3 scrolls designed to preserve one life had been converted into a dead spatial monarch. Bikku considered that trade completely unreasonable, and therefore perfectly consistent with everything Levi had done since arriving. Dumbledore then changed the next phase of the expedition. Griffin Beast King was still searching the void under Earth Mother's orders. If Levi became a space monarch quickly enough, Bikku and Levi could turn the pursuer into another target. Griffin controlled roughly 40% of Wind Law and qualified as a mid-level monarch. That made him far stronger than a newly promoted monarch should normally challenge. The void environment changed the calculation because Levi would control movement while Griffin depended on guides. Bikku could also contribute Earth Law once his injuries recovered enough for one serious fight. This plan required Levi to comprehend the proof of spatial rules faster than history considered reasonable. Bikku said the fastest legendary examples he recognized still needed several years. Dumbledore answered that Levi had already spent years turning historical standards into decorative suggestions. Levi entered the core of the Panda Plane and touched the proof directly. That first attempt drove his consciousness out under overwhelming cosmic pressure. Law comprehension was nothing like receiving 1% of spatial law through the initial plane. That proof forced Levi's mind to confront the universe rather than accept a talent-generated shortcut. That pressure explained why third-stage monarchs could overwhelm second-stage legends so completely. Every law user had survived a process ordinary legendary minds could barely endure. Levi waited until the pain settled and entered the proof again. His second attempt lasted far longer before cosmic pressure forced another retreat. Each session extended his tolerance while turning abstract spatial intuition into structured law understanding. After several cycles, Levy estimated the entire process would take less than a year. That answer sounded absurd enough that Bhikkhu asked him twice whether he was certain. Levy pointed out that being wrong would only mean Griffin survived longer. Dumbledore considered the estimate good enough to proceed with the ambush plan. While Levy cultivated, Earth Mother sent Griffin deeper after sharing her suspicion about the proof. That promised reward doubled if the Beast King found the spatial treasure. That incentive ensured Griffin would keep pushing instead of abandoning an uncomfortable environment. Months passed inside the Panda plane while Levy's understanding climbed toward completion. That proof gradually stopped feeling like an outside force and started feeling like a language he could finally read. How impossible was the kill after Levy brought 3 Monarch scrolls, clones, laws, and perfect timing? Levy sealed the initial plane and focused entirely on the transformation of his physical cultivation. That third legendary stage arrived as his knight profession crossed into Monarch territory. A Space Knight Monarch had appeared where the Void Lord once expected only trapped pandas. The breakthrough did more than add the spatial law power granted by the proof. Levy discovered that his initial plane had expanded again while absorbing law power during the Monarch transformation. Its diameter doubled from roughly 15,000 kilometers to about 30,000 kilometers. 120% spatial law structure now belonged to his knight profession. A second 20% spatial law structure existed independently inside the enlarged initial plane. That gave Levy 2 separate foundations using the same law without forcing either one to replace the other. 30% still marked the usual threshold for a mid-level monarch, but Levy's combined control already exceeded beginner expectations. The enlarged plane also gave his spatial techniques a home field advantage whenever enemies were dragged inside. Bhikkhu sensed the change from the damaged barrier and stopped pretending the expedition had followed any familiar progression path. Bhikkhu had only recovered about half his strength. Griffin Beast King was approaching with guides and still possessed superior raw law percentage. Dumbledore's plan therefore relied on Levy surprising the pursuer before Griffin recognized the new balance. Bhikkhu moved first and deliberately exposed enough presence to attract Griffin toward the Panda region. Griffin Beast King sensed an injured Earth Monarch and treated the situation as an opportunity rather than a warning. Its wind law gave it speed that would normally allow retreat if the battle turned unfavorable. Levy entered the fight after Griffin committed deeply enough that backing away required crossing his spatial control. Griffin Beast King recognized the human from Earth Mother's reports and initially treated him as a newly promoted inconvenience. Then 2 spatial law pressures landed from different structures. Griffin's confidence broke before its defense did. Levy used movement control to deny the clean retreat that made Wind Monarchs so difficult to kill. Bhikkhu absorbed the hardest frontal exchanges because mountain suppressing power remained his specialty. The injured Panda Monarch paid for that role with wounds he had barely started healing. Levy attacked from angles Griffin could not abandon without exposing another side. For one, spatial law prevented the Beast King's greatest advantage from becoming an escape route. How much loyalty did a proof deserve after nearly destroying an entire civilization? The fight stopped resembling a duel between a new monarch and a veteran mid-level ruler. It became a 2-person trap designed around the exact reason Griffin had entered the void. Griffin finally tried to break away after realizing Bhikkhu had never been the main danger. Levy used both spatial foundations to close the route. Griffin Beast King burned through more law power and still failed to create enough distance. Bhikkhu took another direct hit while keeping Griffin inside Levy's kill zone. The cost was ugly, but it bought the one thing spatial monarchs valued above raw damage. From that moment, battlefield position belonged almost entirely to Levy. That final sequence shattered Griffin's body across unstable void space. Fragments disappeared before Levy could preserve most of the Monarch-level corpse. Griffin Beast King died while still trying to understand how a newly promoted space monarch had denied every retreat. Bhikkhu returned to the battlefield after Levy pulled him away from the last dangerous exchange. Bhikkhu looked at the remains with the expression of someone who had watched impossible events become routine. Griffin was the second monarch Levy had helped kill in roughly 2 years. Bhikkhu had personally killed fewer monarchs across a vastly longer life. That victory also proved that Levy's dual 20% spatial laws produced genuine mid-level combat strength. Most of Griffin's corpse was ruined, but one surviving treasure changed the value of the battlefield again. A fragment of the Wind King leaf remained among the spoils. Bhikkhu quickly recognized the supreme wind treasure. Griffin had not integrated it into his law, suggesting Earth Mother had recently offered it as payment. That explained why a Wind Monarch had accepted a mission inside terrain he clearly disliked. Bhikkhu declined the fragment and took only healing resources from the remaining loot. Levy stored the Wind King leaf for later trade because nobody close to him needed it immediately. Severus or Kalia might value the fragment far more than Levi did. The panda plane still could not be transported directly back to Noah. Levi and Biku instead moved it toward a safer dimensional rift near the void boundary. The hiding place allowed Biku to leave without exposing the plane's new position to every faction watching the route. Dumbledore ended his confrontation with Earth Mother once news of Griffin's death reached them. Even he had expected severe injury rather than a clean kill. Earth Mother reacted with enough killing intent that Dumbledore strengthened his own aura in warning. Her subordinate had entered the void hunting a second-stage human and died to that same human as a monarch. The speed of Levi's growth changed him from an irritation into a strategic threat. Dumbledore abandoned a passing thought about hunting the Blood Sea Lord, because provoking Earth Mother further gained Noah nothing. Sometimes the best second kill was the one not attempted after the first victory had already rewritten the board. Other factions reacted even faster than Noah's allies. Earth Mother personally spread news of Griffin's death instead of hiding the embarrassment. Exposing Levi's talent ensured demons, hell and rival gods would start planning around him. Lost monarchs sought confirmation and warned demon forces about the new space monarch. A mid-level demon meeting Levi might now face more danger than encountering Dumbledore in open space. The astral gods reacted by strengthening their own top layer. Several contributed divinity to help the Ice and Snow Emperor push toward top monarch strength. One dead griffin had become an argument for every faction to accelerate progression. Levi ignored most of that politics because the panda plane still needed a stable hiding place. After securing it, he prepared to return with Biku and the legendary panda delegation. Then Biku's earth law fluctuated without warning and Levi's spatial law answered from inside his body. Both monarchs stopped talking because the resonance came from somewhere far beyond the hidden panda plane. Reality itself was announcing that a new competition had started. Proofs of rules had begun descending across the universe earlier than Dawn and Dumbledore expected. Biku explained that the arrivals would be scattered rather than synchronized. Some proofs appeared in dead worlds, others inside catastrophes, and many surfaced where ordinary explorers could not survive. That made every second-stage legend with monarch potential both an opportunity and a target. Stormwind had several people nearing that threshold, but almost none were ready to consume a proof immediately. Levi's new spatial laws gave him one advantage most young monarchs could never copy. He could search farther, arrive faster, and retreat before slower competitors understood what they had found. A violent wind disaster region provided the first example before the panda delegation even finished preparing to leave. A white wolf projection crossed the storm, while a six-winged figure briefly suppressed the worst turbulence. The projection seized a wind law treasure from the core and disappeared before the surrounding disaster fully recovered. Biku watched the distant resonance fade and said that was how the new era would actually look. Not one serious faction would wait for councils to distribute resources fairly when a single proof could create another monarch. Panda's concern was simpler because his surviving clan had only just escaped 10,000 years of siege. He wanted enough time to rebuild before every ambitious faction started searching their hiding places for valuable bloodlines. Andreas answered that rebuilding quietly had probably stopped being an option the moment Levi killed the Void Lord. Panda accused the dragon of enjoying that conclusion far too much. For the first time in years, Biku laughed without needing to check the barrier after the sound. The relief lasted until another law fluctuation rolled through distant space. More monarchs were moving now, and the race was expanding faster than any single faction could map. Dumbledore's warning reached Levi soon afterward with worse political news. Earth Mother had publicly spread the story of Griffin Beast King's death instead of hiding the humiliation. By advertising Levi's growth, she forced demons, hell and rival gods to spend attention preparing counters for him. That retaliation cost Earth Mother almost nothing while making Stormwind's future operations more expensive. Dumbledore warned Levi that fame was not the same thing as deterrence. A space monarch was difficult to trap, but that only encouraged enemies to design specialized ways of limiting movement. Biku agreed because the dead Void Lord had already demonstrated what happened when spatial superiority became complacency. Levi accepted the lesson without pretending it would make him stop hunting rare resources. What monarch could remain cautious forever while hesitation allowed someone else to claim the next law? Stormwind needed scouts, allies, and faster intelligence more urgently than another layer of walls. That conclusion gave the rescued Panda clan a role beyond simply hiding behind Levi's protection. Biku offered experienced trackers who understood void routes forgotten by modern human kingdoms. Panda promised to help rebuild those networks, mostly because he refused to let Andreas become the expedition expert. The dragon called that the first useful motivation Panda had discovered all week. While they argued, Dawn and Dumbledore began deploying search teams around Noah. 4 monarchs escorted 30 second-stage legends through nearby regions showing the earliest law fluctuations. Black King Dragon and Elf God Rose pushed farther outward with separate groups toward more dangerous territory. Every mission had two objectives: claim useful proofs and deny hostile factions the same progression. An unclaimed law resource could become an enemy monarch before the next campaign even started. Stormwind's strongest candidates therefore received new orders to finish cultivation without chasing every rumor personally. Leve would rather lose one treasure than lose a future monarch to impatience. That rule irritated several ambitious fighters, but made perfect sense to veterans who had survived earlier resource wars. News from other factions soon proved the caution necessary. Old avatars, divine projections, and hidden alliances were already appearing around the first confirmed proofs. Entire organizations that had avoided open conflict for years suddenly moved because one law resource justified the risk. Biku called it the universe's most expensive recruitment season. Levy called it a supply problem with unusually murderous buyers. Panda said both descriptions sounded like excuses for another decade of trouble. 4 months later, the Panda delegation finally approached Noah under Stormwind's spatial escort. Their rescue mission had ended, but their arrival expanded Noah's network exactly when law hunting demanded more eyes. Behind them, fresh proof resonances kept appearing across distant regions without waiting for anyone to be ready. The era of rebuilding had lasted just long enough for every major faction to start racing again. 4 months later, Levy finally returned to Noah with Biku and a delegation of legendary pandas. His travel speed now approached Dumbledore's despite the enormous age and cultivation gap between them. The Panda delegation rejoined its Noah branch under the restored Magic Council framework. Dumbledore handled Noah's daily coordination while Dawn protected time for her own advancement. That division recognized a simple strategic truth. Dumbledore had nearly exhausted his progression path, while Dawn still had a realistic route towards Supreme Realm. Levy received a different priority the moment he returned. Dawn wanted his chaos magic raised to Monarch level as quickly as possible. Dumbledore assumed some ancient inheritance had already prepared a proof of chaos rules for him. Dawn corrected that assumption with information from Amon's legacy. A proof of chaos rules would only descend after a true chaos user appeared. Even worse, only someone wielding chaos power could reliably locate it. That explained why the entire Magic Council era had left almost no record of such a proof. The Chaos Stone followed another abnormal rule. Supreme treasures normally escaped part of the universe's automatic reclamation, yet nobody had simply handed Levy a complete one. Dawn possessed 2 fragments carrying Chaos Aura, while Saphras held the main body through an earlier wager. If Levy became the first new Chaos Monarch, Saphras was supposed to surrender that main portion. That final missing fragment could then be sensed through the nearly complete treasure. Dumbledore still struggled with one historical contradiction. Amon had reached terrifying Chaos Law mastery without apparently depending on a complete Chaos Stone. That suggested the ancient wizard had solved a problem modern monarchs considered universal. Levy stored the mystery for later, because Dawn had preserved another immediate opportunity. Captured Dark Lord remained sealed inside her private retreat. Levy's Dominator contract had not reached 3rd stage talent level yet. His Knight cultivation had already crossed into genuine Monarch territory. That change gave his suppression enough force to matter against the Dark Lord. 3 clones entered the prison while Levy used both spatial law structures to suppress the Dark Lord's remaining law defense. Wounded Monarch could barely mobilize a fraction of his normal Dark Law after the abandoned land ordeal. Once those laws were stripped away from the spiritual sea, Dominator contract finally entered without resistance. Dominator contract settled cleanly once the remaining Dark Law was fully suppressed. Dawn watched a 3rd stage Monarch become Levy's slave and briefly forgot to hide her reaction. Enslavement techniques existed in history, but none she recognized turned a captured monarch this efficiently. Levy warned her that the result depended on overwhelming law suppression rather than contract power alone. Against a healthy monarch, automatic law backlash could destroy both target and controller. Theoretically, his contract capacity allowed more than 10 monarchs. Practically, he needed top monarch strength before mass enslavement became realistic. Dawn then focused on the stranger part of the process. She had sensed 2 distinct spatial law structures operating through Levy at once. Levy revealed the initial plane and explained how talent-created law existed separately from his Knight law. That explanation did not make the phenomenon feel more normal. It only confirmed that Levy's progression had created a category Dawn had never needed before. While Noah absorbed that information, every secular power began reorganizing for the proof era. Stormwind City and Anduin's Stormwind Kingdom together now counted 36 legendary figures. That made them the strongest secular human bloc across the northern continent. That number sounded impressive until Levy compared it with factions fielding actual monarchs. 2nd stage legends were no longer final weapons. They were candidates waiting to become reasons for monarch-level wars. One such candidate was already fighting alone far from Noah. Luigi of the Nicholas family had left the southern continent after Aranita's death and pursued vengeance through cultivation. A corridor connected to an Earth Law opportunity trapped him near a hostile faction's search team. His Leyline Guardian talent made the proof uniquely valuable to him. It also made retreat nearly impossible once the corridor transformed into Monarch-level danger. Luigi smashed into the chaotic wall rather than wait for certain death inside the main path. That choice threw him into another unknown region and kept the revenge he had carried for years alive. Back near Stormwind, Noah's monarchs compared information about supreme treasure fragments already moving between factions. Levi still held part of the Wind King leaf recovered from Griffin Beast King. Severus and Kalia had little use for that small fragment because their own law progress was already too advanced. Severus explained that fragments usually stopped helping once law mastery passed roughly half unless they matched a user's primary supreme treasure. That made the fragment far more useful to someone earlier in wind law cultivation. Silent Sister of Hell became relevant because she possessed another piece. She had spent years avoiding major wars while secretly searching for the inheritance of Windwing Goddess. That goddess had been the astral plane's second supreme being and the original discoverer of the Abyss Passage. Her legacy contained both the main Wind King leaf and law comprehension valuable enough to reshape a monarch's future. Mia carried that legacy now without advertising how dangerous it made her. That proof era brought the Silent Sister out of hiding because opportunities and targets were suddenly moving through the same universe. At another front, Dumbledore warned Levi about a much more obvious trap. Sage Eurybia had been drawn into the Sea of Death while 3 demon monarchs surrounded him. A proof of life rules was somewhere inside the conflict. Dumbledore believed the visible demons were bait rather than the full ambush force. High-level or top-level monarchs were likely waiting for anyone valuable enough to attempt a rescue. Ice and Snow Emperor was already moving, but Levi's spatial ability gave Noah a chance to extract Eurybia quickly. Dumbledore ordered Levi to delay if a full rescue became impossible rather than gamble the new space monarch. Levi approached with 3 clones while the main body stayed ready to redirect elsewhere. The moment the clones entered range, both factions recognized the unique spatial law signature. Eurybia relaxed because help had arrived exactly when his defensive advantage was starting to collapse. The demons reacted with the opposite calculation. They had wanted more monarchs inside the trap, but a spatial monarch with clones was the wrong kind of prey. Levi attacked from multiple angles and forced the Wind Demon Lord to split attention. Eurybia seized the opening and sealed the Fire Demon and Troll long enough for extraction. Levi abandoned any thought of killing the bait and used Shuttle beside the injured Sage. Both vanished from the Sea of Death before the demons recovered formation control. Should rescuing Eurybia really have ended the danger that easily? Instead, a far stronger water law pressure descended from outside Levi's danger warning range. Tiamat, a top-tier water demon, had been wading deeper than Noah expected. That revelation disturbed Levi more than the raw strength. His survival system had given no useful warning before the law domain appeared. Tiamat's water law suppressed both Levi's space and Eurybia's ice almost completely. A second Levi clone attacked the domain from outside, while the trapped clone pushed from within. Together they carved a narrow void passage through the water law prison. Eurybia escaped first and still took a devastating strike through the body while leaving. Levi scattered more clones along the retreat route because ordinary distance meant little to a top monarch. Then he turned the pursuit itself into cover for another operation. A multi-eyed swamp worm near the Sea of Death had reached the proof of life rules. Levi used soul descent through a seemingly ordinary slave and released spatial law from inside that borrowed body. The troll Lord Scylla saw a non-human servant suddenly wield monarch-level space and lost precious seconds trying to understand it. That was enough for the swamp worm carrying the proof to escape the demon encirclement. Levi's spatial presence vanished from the possessed body before Scylla could capture an explanation. Tiamat abandoned the longer pursuit and returned to investigate personally. The demons destroyed their own slaves during a brutal search because none could explain how Levi's possession method carried law power. Far away, Levi felt one controlled body disappear and confirmed that the deception had worked. At the same time, another transformation began inside his night life seed. One upgraded talent had triggered the initial plane to absorb new laws again. Spatial law strengthened first, exactly as Levi had hoped. Then a second unfamiliar law entered the plane. And before he could identify it, a third law began forming beside the first 2. What else had the initial plane absorbed while Levi stole a proof beneath demon eyes? Now his initial plane was no longer growing around one law. It was becoming a place where several different rules of the universe could coexist. Levi withdrew far enough that Tiamat could no longer follow without abandoning the Sea of Death entirely. Eurybia needed immediate recovery, so Noah's extraction route became more important than further treasure hunting. The life-proof operation had worked because every demon commander assumed the escaping sage was Levi's only objective. That mistake converted one rescue into two separate gains. Eurybia survived, and the proof escaped the trap under a body nobody considered strategically important. What did it cost the demons to learn Soul Descent could carry law power now? They destroyed their own servants, exposed Tiamat early, and still failed to recover the treasure. Levi considered that an efficient education fee. Dawn would care about the stolen proof later. Dumbledore would care even more about the new laws forming inside the initial plane. Levi cared first about identifying them before another battlefield forced him to improvise with unknown power. That second law carried a familiar relationship to movement rather than ordinary space. That third resonated with wind in a way that reminded him of air wing and older speed talents. Neither one behaved like a complete monarch law yet. Both were still being shaped by the same talent evolution that strengthened his spatial foundation. That made the initial plane feel less like storage and more like a machine learning Levi's entire progression history. Every old talent could potentially become a future law once the right upgrade forced the plane to interpret it. That idea was exciting enough to become dangerous if he assumed it always worked the same way. Levi decided to test the pattern before building strategy around it. Outside, more proofs were already descending and more monarchs were already moving toward them. There would be no shortage of experiments if he survived the competition. And the universe had just given every faction a reason to stop pretending this was still a limited treasure hunt. That new law growth inside Levi's initial plane settled slowly enough for him to identify each component. Spatial law remained the foundation because the entire plane had been born from dimensional space. A second structure carried the logic of movement rather than distance itself. Levi identified it as speed law, amplified through earlier talents built around acceleration. A third structure resonated with wind and matched the old air wing effect. The panel confirmed what Levi had only suspected during the escape from Tiamat. Speed law had already reached roughly 10%. Wind law existed at only 1% inside the expanding initial plane. The initial plane's spatial law rose beyond the 20% held by Levi's knight profession. That difference mattered because combining unequal spatial laws was less stable than combining equal ones. Levi tested the fusion carefully and watched his combat pressure climb past beginner monarch standards. Their combined space power touched genuine mid-level output, but could not be maintained comfortably for long. For prolonged fighting, he still needed to restrain the fusion to a safer level. What mattered more than one temporary power spike if the initial plane kept learning new laws? Every third-stage talent upgrade could force the initial plane to absorb laws related to that talent's special effects. Old laws also strengthened when new talents evolved. The initial plane was converting Levi's entire talent history into a growing law system. Each old talent now supplied structure instead of remaining an isolated combat trick. That realization changed how he chose the next upgrade. Levi resumed hunting legendary squads belonging to Demons and Earth Mother's faction. The Black Rock Plane offered the first convenient target after Stone Demon Lord Morax left to search for proofs. 6 second-stage demons and 15 first-stage demons remained behind to guard the stronghold. Every demon inside Black Rock died before reinforcements could return. The plane's treasures disappeared with them, but Morax himself never returned in time to become a monarch target. Levi intercepted several other squads and probed demon movements across nearby routes. Monarchs below high rank rarely traveled far enough from support for a safe ambush. That forced Levi to harvest legendary teams rather than gamble on a full monarch hunt. Wind Demon Pazuzu eventually received a dedicated order to hunt him and disrupted the operation. By then, Levi had already gathered enough essence for another third-stage talent upgrade and part of the next. He withdrew before greed turned efficient hunting into a predictable habit. Another talent chosen was Ultimate Strength because explosive force would improve direct combat the most. When the upgrade began, the initial plane opened again and pulled new law power from the universe. Force Law appeared first as Ultimate Strength completed its transformation. Fire Law followed through the old Flame Body connection. Then the existing laws of space, speed, and wind strengthened again under the same transformation. At last, the repeating pattern became clear as every older law responded again. A talent introduced the law tied to its core nature, and sometimes laws tied to important special effects. Every later talent upgrade also fed the older law structures already rooted inside the initial plane. That meant law growth could compound even when Levi was not cultivating each law directly. Several months later, the initial plane finished expanding and stabilizing. Its scale had surpassed most small worlds, and was approaching the threshold of a medium-sized plane. Levi expected 1 or 2 more major talent upgrades to complete that transformation. The law system inside also gave him stable mid-level monarch combat strength without forced fusion. This was far easier to use than the temporary combination that exhausted him earlier. More importantly, Levi had stopped depending on a single law path to define his battles. Spatial law controlled position across every serious monarch battlefield. Speed law compressed reaction time whenever enemies tried to disengage. Wind law supported movement without replacing Levi's spatial control. Force law multiplied impact whenever positioning finally created a clean hit. Fire punished anyone who assumed his power was only spatial. That collection still lacked the completeness of an ancient top monarch, but its growth rate was abnormal enough to compensate. Elsewhere, another human finally reached monarch territory through a much more traditional path. Luigi emerged from seclusion with Earth law and the same revenge that had driven him out of Noah. He had not forgotten Aranita or the Frankish powers connected to her death. Monarch advancement did not soften that hatred. It simply gave the hatred a battlefield large enough to reach its target. At the same time, Stormwind's own second-stage legends began searching beyond Noah for suitable proofs. Angelus traveled with Panda and Andreas toward a dead medium-sized plane carrying fire law traces. All three had reached second-stage perfection and needed proofs to go any farther. Their urgency was strategic as well as personal. Every faction was producing monarchs, and remaining second stage meant becoming support for people who advanced first. The search took them beyond Noah's safest influence. Angelus warned Panda and Andreas that Earth Mother, Hell, or other factions could appear without warning. That warning became reality elsewhere when Mia encountered the Silent Sister of Hell. Mia had already become a new monarch through Windwing Goddess's inheritance. The Wind King leaf fragment she carried accelerated her wind law to a level unusual for a fresh breakthrough. Her inheritance also included a responsibility to help rebuild the astral plane. That goal required far more strength than a newly promoted monarch possessed. Silent Sister wanted exactly the treasure capable of accelerating that growth. She had spent years searching for Windwing Goddess's legacy while avoiding wars that offered no direct benefit. Her own Wind King leaf fragment proved that the larger inheritance existed somewhere. When Mia appeared with the stronger Windwing aura, the Silent Sister recognized what she had found. Mia recognized the danger just as quickly. A mid-level wind monarch specialized in the same law and had better raw mastery. Running was the only rational first move. Mia used the Wind King leaf's inherited defense to break through the initial blockade. Silent Sister recognized the former goddess's power inside that defense, and became even more determined to pursue. The chase crossed regions already destabilized by proof hunters and hidden Jedi formations. Mia's best hope was that another monarch would enter the route and complicate the pursuit. Reality supplied exactly that kind of complication. Luigi encountered a familiar body carrying the wrong soul. The man looked like Harris from the Frankish conflict, and Luigi attacked before strategic caution could restrain him. Earth law turned every strike into an attempt to collect years of delayed revenge. The opponent defended with surprising confidence and quickly revealed power beyond the Harris Luigi remembered. After enough exchanges, Luigi recognized the mismatch. The body belonged to Harris, but the will controlling it was someone else. That answer was the surviving Lord of Light using Harris as a vessel. Luigi's rage had already carried him deep inside a dangerous formation before he recognized the truth. That revelation did not make him safe. It only changed the person he believed he was trying to kill. Then two more monarch auras appeared through another spatial disturbance. One belonged to Mia, still fleeing the Silent Sister. Another unfamiliar aura belonged to the monarch still pursuing Mia. 4 monarchs who had never planned to meet suddenly occupied the same unstable region. Lord of Light tried to withdraw before the coincidence became a battlefield. Silent Sister cared more about Mia's inheritance than about Harris's body or Luigi's revenge. Mia was injured enough that a prolonged fight could end badly before any ally recognized her location. Levi's clone sensed the clustered monarch auras and recognized one. Mia's signature had changed, but enough of her old presence remained for him to identify her. The clone used the initial plane to cross the distance while Levi's main body accelerated from farther away. 3 unfamiliar monarchs around Mia were too many for one clone to treat casually. The arrival of Levi's spatial law changed every calculation at once. Lord of Light recognized the only active Noah space monarch and stopped pretending the coincidence remained manageable. Silent Sister also recognized that escape from a spatial mid-level monarch could become difficult very quickly. Levi deployed the initial plane across the region and broke roughly half the local formation by raw spatial pressure. The scale of that pressure revealed his current strength before anyone asked. Both enemies had heard about the newly promoted space monarch. Neither expected him to reach mid-level combat power within only a few years. Mia finally had enough room to explain what had happened. Levi learned about Windwing Goddess, the inheritance, and the Silent Sister's pursuit in one compressed exchange. He also recognized Luigi from information shared by the Nicholas family. Mia stared when Levi explained that the reckless Earth monarch was Wendy and Amy's father. Levi sent her to protect Luigi while he handled the 2 veteran enemies. Lord of Light and Silent Sister agreed to cooperate. because neither wanted separate pursuit paths controlled by Levi. They activated remaining formations to suppress his spatial law and create an escape corridor. Levi increased pressure instead of trying to block every technique individually. Lord of Light found a temporary route and discovered another Levi clone waiting at the end. That precision convinced him Levi was not simply reacting to movement. Extraordinary precognition was predicting the escape path before the route fully formed. Levi confronted the borrowed Harris body and stated the obvious conclusion. The soul inside was the Lord of Light. The ancient ruler tried to deny the identity and offered neutrality instead of explanation. He even proposed a rules contract if Levi feared future hostility. Levi rejected the offer because someone who had already betrayed Noah once too expensive to trust twice. Two clones attacked while spatial law sealed the route. Lord of Light relied on Earth law and ancient preparation to resist far better than Silent Sister expected. After hours of fighting, he activated a hidden method that reversed pressure against Levi's spatial domain. One clone nearly collapsed under the sudden shift. Then 9 radiant artifacts combined into a finishing attack powerful enough to threaten Levi directly. Levi answered with the initial plane and the collection of laws now rooted inside it. Space alone would not have been enough. Those additional laws absorbed part of the attack and kept his defense from breaking. Lord of Light finally recognized that Levi was carrying far more than one monarch path. At the same time, Levi's main body and another clone finished the Silent Sister. The Wind Monarch had never learned enough about Levi's layered abilities to survive the coordinated trap. With her dead, Mia's Windwing inheritance was no longer being chased by its most persistent claimant. Levi turned all remaining pressure toward the Lord of Light. The balance shifted so hard that resistance became containment rather than escape. He prepared Dominator contract instead of wasting another monarch corpse if enslavement remained possible. Before the contract could settle, another message reached him from the fireproof expedition. Angelus Panda and Andreas had found exactly what they were searching for. A proof of fire rules had appeared in the ruins of the dry fire plane. A flame demon team had found it too, and a mid-level flame demon lord was already blocking the Dark Lord slave Levi had sent to protect them. That new crisis forced Levi to divide attention between an unfinished monarch capture and his own family. Angelus was carrying a fireproof opportunity valuable enough to attract Hell's strongest hunters. Panda and Andreas could delay second-stage demons, but neither could stop a monarch alone. Levi tightened the pressure on the Lord of Light and ordered his clones to finish quickly. What had begun as a collision of unrelated monarchs was turning into a race toward another law battlefield. And somewhere ahead, Angelus had already chosen to run deeper instead of surrendering the proof. Panda's warning reached Levi while the Lord of Light was still resisting inside the collapsing battlefield. Angelus had disappeared from the dry fire plane while more than 10 fire demons pursued her. A mid-level flame demon lord remained close enough to turn any rescue into another monarch engagement. Levi contacted Severus first because Wind Law made him the fastest available responder from Noah. Severus reached the dry fire ruins quickly and found only scattered traces of the chase. Angelus had already crossed some unknown cosmic rupture beyond his search radius. Another wind demon appeared near Noah before Severus could keep searching indefinitely. The High Monarch had to return, leaving Levi with no reliable location for Angelus. Levi stopped treating the Lord of Light's capture as something he could finish patiently. He concentrated star and mental power against the borrowed body's spiritual sea. The ancient ruler recognized Levi wanted enslavement and changed the shape of his final resistance. Instead of exploding the body, he tried to destroy his own mind while Levi's consciousness was already inside. Retreating would expose Levi to the same spiritual backlash without gaining control. So Levi pushed deeper and accepted the damage rather than abandoning the attempt. Dominator contract finally settled after the self-destruction was forced down. That victory looked useful until Levi inspected what remained. More than 90% of the Lord of Light's soul had dissipated. That contract controlled little more than a surviving fragment inside Harris's body. Levi's own spirit carried serious injuries from suppressing the collapse. That information inside the surviving soul was another matter. Levi recovered secrets about supreme treasure fragments, ancient plans, and hidden hell interests. That complete heart of the earth mattered most, because Harris had been chosen as a vessel partly for that treasure. Only a small portion had been absorbed before the capture. Levi stored the body inside the initial plane, instead of letting cosmic rules reclaim whatever remained. He also learned that the Shadow Lord and Necromancer Lord were pursuing fragments of their own supreme treasures. Those obsessions would keep two dangerous hell rulers away from Noah's immediate conflicts for a while. Levi sent that intelligence home before checking on Mia and Luigi. Mia was relieved he returned alive and explained more of Windwing Goddess's inheritance. That complete Wind King leaf had survived, because the ancient goddess intercepted most of it from cosmic reclamation. Its stored comprehension could push Mia toward top monarch's strength far faster than ordinary cultivation. Levi handed her the extra fragment recovered from Griffin Beast King. For Mia, the gift converted an enemy's bounty into fuel for an inheritance he never meant to strengthen. Eventually, Angelus made contact from somewhere beyond Severus's search radius. She had survived by diving into an unknown dangerous region while fire demons followed behind. The place carried a destructive aura strong enough to suppress normal elemental signatures. More importantly, Angelus had sensed a proof of destruction rules inside. Levi abandoned every other plan and redirected his movement toward Angelus. That proof might help his destruction power from the Night Dark Calamity become an actual law. Angelus recognized that possibility and had entered deeper instead of fleeing the region completely. That decision trapped her between treasure and pursuit. 5 fire demons continued chasing, because their monarch had ordered them to stay on her no matter the danger. Panda and Andreas remained behind with the remaining enemies while trying to buy time. Levi moved toward Angelus without leaving clones near the earlier battlefield. If high monarchs were attracted to the destructive region, divided strength would become a liability. Angelus confirmed the proof's location and tried to hold the fire demons away from it. Flame demon monarch Mavolo recognized the trap faster than his subordinates. He recognized Angelus possessed spatial escape tools, and that attacking her directly might be misdirection. Who had actually won if Levi saved Angelus while Mavolo carried the proof of destruction? Mavolo redirected part of his force toward the treasure while keeping enough pressure on Angelus to prevent an easy retreat. Levi arrived as the battlefield split around those two objectives. His spatial power protected Angelus from the next killing sequence. Mavolo used the opening exactly as expected and seized the proof of destruction rules. What did victory even mean when each side escaped with the treasure it valued most? Levi still had Angelus alive, which mattered more than the stolen proof. Mavolo had the proof of destruction rules, and another fire law proof already taken from a Naga faction. Angelus apologized because she had failed to hold the destruction proof until Levi arrived. Levi dismissed the apology and sent her into the 9-colored pagoda to recover. He reminded her that surviving with 1 proof was better than dying beside 2. Then Mavolo demanded Levi leave before Samael arrived. The threat made Levi laugh because surrendering now meant giving up exactly what he had crossed the battlefield to recover. 3 clones surrounded Mavolo while the main body deployed the initial plane from behind. 7 different laws pressed into the flame demon monarch at once. Mavolo had expected spatial tricks and discovered a law system he had no framework for understanding. He tried to buy time rather than defeat Levi directly. Samael was close enough that surviving roughly half a month could turn the battle completely. Levi recognized the same deadline and attacked harder each day. Spatial control prevented Mavolo from entering the destructive zone deeply enough to break contact. Clones forced him to defend from directions ordinary monarch movement could not cover efficiently. More than 10 days passed with Mavolo losing ground and body parts faster than demon regeneration could fully erase the damage. The flame demon repeatedly asked why Samael had not reached him yet. Levi already recognized the answer from Slytherin's message. Samael had encountered the Night Lord on the route and crushed through him instead of taking the longer detour. Slytherin survived but could not delay a 97% top monarch for long. Levi's danger sense began registering the approaching threat before Mavolo received any relief. Half an hour remained at most before Samael entered direct interference range. The destruction proof was still inside Mavolo's possession. So was the extra fire proof Andreas needed for future advancement. Levi used the 1 trump card he had avoided revealing since becoming a space monarch. The main body and 3 clones activated time freeze from 4 directions. Mavolo recognized what happened only after his body stopped responding. Time itself locked around the flame demon while Levi's attacks continued inside the opening. 3 clones sealed Mavolo into the initial plane before the effect ended. Levi retracted the plane and fled the instant Samael entered perception range. The top flame demon arrived to find his subordinate missing with multiple proofs still inside Levi's private world. Samael burned demon power and crossed the distance with terrifying speed. 1 supreme strike erased the clone Levi released as an emergency shield. The main body still suffered from the aftershock. Samael's 97% law mastery made earlier top monarchs feel almost forgiving by comparison. Then Levi sensed Godric nearby and used shuttle without hesitation. The Earth High Monarch stepped between them before Samael could land another clean attack. Godric's defense was strong enough to buy time even though his raw law percentage remained lower. 3 hours later, more demon monarchs arrived around the battlefield. A high wind demon brought several mid-level allies towards Samael. Dumbledore arrived before the imbalance became fatal. Other monarchs from both factions collided across the surrounding region at almost the same time. 1 treasure chase had expanded into a large-scale monarch melee. Dumbledore shielded Levi and the badly injured Godric while taking responsibility for Samael personally. Godric had already paid heavily for holding a stronger fire monarch in place. For a long moment, the outer battlefield looked recoverable before Vermina stopped searching for a route that saved everyone. Thunder and wind demons had already pushed her injuries past anything a normal retreat could solve. When Levi's clone finally reached her, Vermina calmly rejected the rescue he had risked sending. She judged demon reinforcements would arrive before Noah's central battlefield could survive another prolonged exchange. Killing both attackers now would free Levi's clone to help dismantle the remaining ice demons. Vermina admitted her lifespan was already near its natural end, making the choice easier for her than for Levi. Before he could argue again, she told him to watch for the ice god crystal she had refined. She would force the supreme fragment out and sever ownership before death so his spatial perception could catch it. Her final request was simple: give the ice god crystal to Gulvig when the battlefield was finally safe. Gulvig's exceptional ice talent could turn that inheritance into faster monarch cultivation, instead of another forgotten relic. Vermina suppressed the wind demon one last time and charged directly toward the thunder demon. Her mental magic tower materialized around all remaining power and detonated between the two enemies. The blast swallowed thunder and wind law together, while Levi stared at a decision he understood but could not accept. An ice god crystal fragment tore through the aftershock, and Levi imprisoned it before the battlefield could steal her legacy. At least Vermina's dying wish would reach Gulvig, and that promise hardened Levi's grief into something much colder. He targeted the badly wounded Thunder Demon before either survivor could reach Stone Demon Loki. Dozens of sword strikes carrying different laws landed before the demon could rebuild its broken defense. The Thunder Demon died beneath 7 laws and the pressure of Levi's initial plane. Without pausing for spoils, Levi sealed the Wind Demon's retreat with spatial law. The Wind Demon begged Locke for support, but Slytherin's desperate obstruction kept the Stone Monarch occupied. A few minutes after Vermina's self-destruction, the second wounded demon also died under Levi's pursuit. 3 Monarch deaths in rapid succession changed the outer battlefield faster than any command could manage. Locke tried to gather the remaining ice demons before Noah's side exploited the shock. Slytherin told Levi to take the weaker ice demon, but Levi attacked the stronger target first. That feint pulled the stronger enemy away long enough for spatial transfer to reverse the pressure. The weaker ice demon suddenly faced Levi, Thorin, and Briggs without a prepared escape lane. After that execution, Locke and the last ice demon finally retreated rather than add 2 more names to Vermina's payment. Slytherin ordered a pursuit only long enough to keep them separated from the central battlefield. It was preventing fresh demon numbers from returning before Levi and Godric could regroup. At the center, Samael still fought Dumbledore without achieving decisive control. Both were top fire monarchs, but Dumbledore's wizard methods and mental tower gave him far greater tactical variety. Once the outer demon line collapsed, Dumbledore had no reason to remain in a contest over pride. He told Samael plainly that the proofs were already lost and the supporting monarchs had failed. Samael threatened to wait for Pazuzu and continue the pursuit. Dumbledore answered by reminding him that another top demon had already died to council power before. Then several formations erupted from Dumbledore's magic tower and forced separation. Dumbledore broke contact and left before Samael could rebuild the battlefield. Samael could not stop him without accepting a battle even more expensive than the one already lost. Near Noah's boundary, Dumbledore returned 3 proofs of rules to Levi. The hall included the destruction proof and the fire law resources recovered through Mavolo's defeat. He also counted 4 dead demon monarchs across the wider battle, though Vermina's sacrifice made celebration impossible. Levi still blamed himself for not ending Mavolo sooner. Dumbledore told him that Vermina had chosen the outcome that saved the greatest number of allies. Then he asked what Levi intended to do with the proof of destruction rules. Levi explained the destruction power awakened during his night calamity and his plan to test it through the initial plane. Dumbledore admitted the method had no precedent he trusted. After everything Levi's initial plane had already done, precedent was becoming a weak argument anyway. Then Dumbledore produced one final object from the battle's recovered treasures. Levi recognized the aura before he recognized the shape. Fragments of the Supreme Blade of Destruction rested in the Grand Chancellor's hand. That proof could give Levi a law. The broken blade might eventually give that law something far more dangerous to grow around.